What is up, everybody? Tony here, Patio Slate Podcast. I'm here, as always, with Anthony and Nate. How you guys doing tonight?
Good, man. Anthony here. It's birthday night for me, birthday day, so I'm doing really well.
Yeah, happy birthday, brah.
Happy birthday, man. I'm going to throw a virtual cheers to you right now.
Virtual cheers, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We're socially distanced on two different coasts, all over the country coming at you tonight. Yeah, October 14th, 2020, episode 32 of the Patio Slate Podcast. We are now officially almost 8 months old. Check us on the socials. Before we get to our guest, we had a guest tonight. Check us on the socials, at Patio Slave on Twitter and Instagram, and then patioslavepodcast@gmail.com. So, yeah, I'm going to throw it to Tuan. We had a guest tonight. Who did we talk to?
So we talked to Frank Maddocks. So Frank is the VP of Creative Services over at Warner Brothers Records. He's been in this kind of creative design and artwork space for over 20 years, and he's probably put the visuals together for a few of your favorite bands. So he's done 7 albums for the Deftones. He's done several albums for Linkin Park. So those are kind of household names on this podcast. He's worked with The Used. He's worked with recent bands like Higher Power, Gary Clark Jr., Madonna. How about that? I mean, he's worked with Madonna. Alanis Morissette, AFI. I mean, the list goes on, and he's just we always talk about Deftones' White Pony, and he was the creative behind that visual, and it was great to get some behind the scenes look at the creative process and that whole thing. So shout out to Frank. I really hope you guys enjoy this.
Yeah, I think it was cool to talk to him, get him on, get some backstory on these albums that you'd mentioned. Don't forget Michelle Branch. You did Michelle Branch too.
Yeah.
Whole list of artists.
Green Day.
But yeah, he's super gracious for him to come on. He's up in LA, so his artwork's everywhere for a lot of the bands we like. Deftones, obviously our house band, did a billboard in downtown LA, so that's really cool to see. But he was really awesome to come on, and can't wait to get into the conversation. So without further ado, here's Frank Maddocks.
Hey Frank, thanks for coming on tonight. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So we talk about this with a lot of our guests when we have them on, just how when we think about future guests, we've hit guitarists, drummers, we've had MCs, we've had record store owners, you name it. But what we haven't had is anyone in the visual space, in the creative visual space. So we thought of you, certainly not to check that box, but because we're massive fans of a lot of the work that you've had your fingerprints on. So we all thought of you. So here you are. So again, we appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, I've heard you guys talk about visuals, and so I know that you appreciate that. So I'm happy to be a part of it.
Awesome. Yeah. So being a music podcast that we are, we like to delve into everybody's music come up on this pod. So what were you into when you were younger? What kind of lit that fuse for you?
Well, I've always been into music. I'm not a musician myself, so I kind of I'm fortunate that I'm in the position now that I'm in. I get to kind of live vicariously through the bands that I get to work with. But I don't know, music's always been a passion of mine. I was always the kid kind of like searching for new bands, searching for side projects of bands, spending hours at Tower Records going through, random, bins of hard to find CDs and trying to bring things to my friends that they've never heard before. And, always the guy introducing music to our group of people, and sometimes I was really embraced by people. Like some of my friends cite their most favorite bands are bands that I've turned them on to, and sometimes not so much, but always just really been interested in music.
Sounds familiar.
Very.
Yes. We're doing that on the show all the time. Twan's pulling out some like crazy deep cut metal band. We're like, damn, nice, man. Never heard of this, but I'm totally into this. So,
yeah, it's great.
So in that like discovery phase, where you're just seeking the next band, are you noticing the CD covers and the visuals and that element of it? Or was it just, hey, this band sounds good, I like it? Or did that add to the experience at all? Are you noticing that?
I'm definitely noticing about, how album covers make me feel about a band before I buy the CD and then after I've bought it. I am one of those people that obviously that's drawn to like the visuals of an album cover. Probably bought many things just based on the visuals and maybe it looked like something else that I liked. So I could count on it kind of like sonically being in that realm. But I remember really responding to things that didn't resonate with me, like a cover of an album that was like, oh, I don't get that vibe from that at all. Or, you know, maybe something that was like, you know, on both ends of the spectrum, something that really, you know, kind of like embrace it and like, oh yeah, this is definitely that world, or something where I was like, oh man, I don't feel like this at all from that album cover. So yeah, visuals definitely were important.
Wow, that's awesome. So at this point, were you starting to kind of hash out your own artwork, influenced by what you're seeing here in the stores and whatnot, or?
Well, not necessarily. You know, I don't know how far back you want to go, but like out, you know, I went to art school, went to Art Center, College of Design. After I went there, I was working, kind of freelance, doing things here and there for various companies. I started to do a lot of work for record labels, and so I was getting the chance to kind of like, you know, do some imaging for music, and that was something I was always passionate about. So then, you know, I was approached by Warner Brothers, a label that I was doing work for at the time, if I'd like to come on full time. And so that's when I took the job at Warner Brothers in 1999, I think, or 2000.
Wow, that's awesome. Right at the tail end and into 2000. So you're working with literally these bands that came out of nowhere, Linkin Park being one of them. They were, you know, kind of an up and coming band, and you kind of linked up with them with no back catalog. This band is just getting started. Did you have any idea at all, like how things were going to turn out for the band, and with your artwork kind of coinciding, or was it kind of literally out of nowhere?
That one was literally out of nowhere. I mean, you know, they came in, like you said, blank slate, very passionate about art and music. You know, Mike and Joe in the band are both artists, so they're very interested in the visuals. You know, it's to answer your question, I don't think anybody really had the idea that it would go on to do what it did, or that the band would go on to have the success that it did. But by no means did we all 100% understood it. Like, they were really hardworking. The album was amazing. They were super passionate. You know, when you're in it, doing it, you don't have the kind of foresight to say like, oh, this is going to be huge, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes especially if you're doing visuals for something, it's almost better if you don't have that, because then you kind of like, you know, you get a little nervous, you start second guessing yourself, you maybe make some decisions, you know, some wrong decisions. So I was fortunate that I really, you know, I felt very passionate about it, but I had no, you know, kind of idea that it would go on to be what it was.
In the moment, are you like, you obviously have a stake in it because you've got your fingerprints on the artwork. You want this to do well, and then as it's blowing up, you must be like, wow, I can't believe this is happening with this brand new band, and your artwork is everywhere, on tour, on posters, on CDs.
100%. I mean, when you do that, you do have a stake in it. You want it to do well, not only for the art and your craft, but for the band that you've come to, you know, get close with these people, right? And you wish success for them. As it started to grow, it was, you know, the second album package that I did, and it was just amazing to see the world embrace, you know, the music and the art. Like, I felt like we really did something that was kind of left of center for the art. Like, you know, it challenged things, you know, challenged people to kind of dive into it a little bit. It wasn't like a first read, I didn't think, you know, and I think that like we were able to kind of like bring people along with us on that visual journey. Like, I remember presenting the album cover at the office to people, you know, people outside of like the art realm. They were like, oh, that's cool, but I don't really know what's happening there. Or, you know, like, didn't get the reference, didn't get the street art reference, didn't get the, you know, kind of mix of these elements on the cover. So I was happy that it was embraced and, you know, kind of successful.
So you mentioned Mike and Joe being artists themselves and being into the creation of that. They're brand new, right? I mean, they've only been kicking around for a couple of years as a band, probably don't have any major label success. How much are they informing what you're doing, and how much, you know, are you giving to them and they're saying, yeah, that's awesome?
I would say on that one, it was like a fantastic mix of us all collaborating together. Like, you know, like I mentioned, they're super professional, very artistic. Our first meeting, you know, all 6 members in the band, or all 5 members at the time, walked in, you know, with books under their arms and art books and all these graphic design things. And we just had this huge initial meeting of like, you know, here's what we're interested in. And, you know, all the things that they loved, I loved, and I had some of the same books in my office. So immediately we were like on the same page. It was like fantastic. I feel like the process was really quick. You know, it was kind of abbreviated. I think it wasn't like a long drawn out process as far as like, you know, kind of like searching for images. And it was definitely like a really nice push and pull of like, how about this? How about that? Boom, let's combine these things. You do this, I'll do that. And then here we go. So it was just, I mean, I haven't actually had a project that was that collaborative since that, I think. So it was pretty amazing.
It's interesting. When I think about bands of that ilk in that era, a lot of the CD covers are photographs. They're just pictures.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
At least for me, who was, you know, we were all like 14, 15, whatever, when that came out. It was probably a first exposure to that kind of street art, which was super cool. Because I mean, I had a T-shirt of that, and then certainly down the road with Meteora, it was like the sound. It was the whole optics. It was basically a brand, right? I mean, it was like a company. You know what I mean? That you wanted to rep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we definitely were good at crafting like an identity for them, you know, and sometimes you kind of have to hang your coat on something. And I feel like we really did, like, you know, we are brought an artistic vibe to it. You know, it was a lot about the art at all times. And I think that was something pretty special.
It's crazy to think that you guys were all just getting started. You said you had just started at Warner Brothers at this time. And so Linkin Park's coming into the fold. Did that change your willingness to work with groups and up and comers because of that? Because it was like this perfect moment of everyone's on the same page where it kind of led to that?
No, it just, you know what it did was it gave me confidence moving forward. Like I saw that, like, if I do what's true to my, you know, to my feelings and what I want to do, and that I'm passionate about, that we can have some success there. And so whenever I was met with, adversity, I could just kind of look back on that and say, like, well, look, we did this great stuff that we were all passionate about, and you know, let's just keep moving forward.
So awesome. You jump in that same year, you're working with Deftones on White Pony. They're obviously established as a band at that point, a couple records in, but this is the first one that you worked with them. That must have been a little bit different, right? You know, working with a band that's established, they probably had kind of an idea how they want to go. You know, musically, they've been together for a bit, that type of thing.
Yeah, so actually Deftones was my first record that I ever worked on. And you guys have probably heard me tell the story, but it was an album that I sought after. I was a huge fan of the band, found myself working at Warner Records, and they were on Maverick. So I raised my hand and was like, I want to work on this project. My first album. So it was pretty special. You know, and the process there was not dissimilar. I mean, it was like extremely collaborative, and just an amazing experience to get to be a part of that album.
Yeah, we joke around on this podcast that in no other circumstance or context would I wear a shirt with a pony on it.
Right.
Or like even behind me, I have a flag from White Pony, and it's like it was it was so simple yet fit the vibe. So it just worked. Yeah,
that was a strong graphic, and you know, I think that the brand, you know, going back to your branding conversation, like just the icon and the branding along that was good.
It was killer. I mean, we I think we just on our Instagram recently just put up that image, and it's just like, you know what it is, whether or not you're even a fan of the Deftones, you know exactly who that is, which is pretty wild, which can't be a lot of bands you can't say that for.
When you found your shirt from 20 some odd years ago too that might barely still fit.
It's too big. Yeah. I think it is.
Is it too big? Even better. Good for you, man. So in making that visual for that album, I mean, it fits. It's perfect. We all agree. We've talked about this before, even having you on. It is pretty simplistic as far as like there's not a ton going on, which is awesome. How do you know when that's done?
It's funny because I had done some other, you know, kind of like rounds of ideas using the pony and all this other stuff. And if you know anything about my work, I like to sometimes I collage together a lot of elements and get things heavily layered. And so there was a lot of that stuff happening. But I also did things that were very kind of minimalistic like that, just kind of letting the image breathe. And those are the ones that kind of started to resonate with us, you know, just kind of like letting this clean aesthetic come through, just utilizing the pony. And it kind of, there's a mystery there, you know, it's like you said, like you see the pony, you know it, but you don't really know what it's talking about, especially then. You know, we did a lot of stuff before the album came out, where we started, sniping the pony on streets, and putting up billboards and posters and all this stuff. So it was like this, there's a nod to like some propaganda thing kind of happening there, like a little bit of a, Shepard Fairey vibe, where like it's like this unknown propaganda thing happening. And so I really liked that kind of clean aesthetic for all the packaging. And then when you open it up, then you get into this kind of like more textural, kind of like, gritty, almost punk rock kind of DIY vibe with the photos and the, collaging and that kind of stuff, which to me is kind of like, how I envisioned Deftones at the time, kind of just very like, left of center, not presenting them in a way that is different from everybody that's out there at the time.
So they're, like Tony said, they're established, this comes out and whatnot. And as you're working with them, is there any sense of pressure because they're established? And you said you're a fan, so I'm sure that's a whole different element. Where with Linkin Park, I think they were probably just too new, right? They didn't have a couple albums behind them, but was there a sense of pressure of, hey, this band's trusting me with their visuals, anything like that?
100%. I mean, so when you're a fan of something, it's amazing to be able to get to work on that project, but it's also kind of like the biggest thing that happens to you at that point. So, I mean, I was a huge fan of the band before I got to work with them and, continue to work with them. So it's amazing. But the pressure alone that I put on myself was, exponential. I mean, many late nights, just lots of nervous breakdowns. The workload was a lot for one person, beyond just the album cover that everyone talks about, but so much stuff went into that. We had multiple editions of the CDs and vinyls and advertising and merch. And, it was a lot. So yeah, it was, such an amazing experience, but very stressful. No stress from the label, though. It was all my own. It was all self-imposed.
It's crazy to think that when we're, listening to the music and the artwork, obviously it's, it's a finished product and, we're outsiders looking in. For you, especially working on a record like this, do you get like an advanced copy of the record to help inspire the artwork that you're purveying for the album, or is it vice versa?
Every situation is different. Sometimes you get to hear music, if in a perfect world, you get to hear music because it really lets you in, and I think it inspires things you may not have thought of, in a vacuum. On Pony, I was able to get a burned CD copy sent over to me, and it's got handwritten tracks on it. I think I still have it. I'm a fool if I don't.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but I literally, I mean, it's been 20 years, and I literally remember where I was listening to certain songs on that album and maybe how things are slightly different, in the mix or things of this or that. But yeah, I can almost remember driving home, late night listening to Pink Maggot or something like that, or Digital Bath, for the first time and just being blown away. Like, so yeah, long answer, but yes, I got a copy of the album.
That's pretty.
Awesome.
I mean, yeah, that's amazing too. You especially being a fan of that band, and now you're kind of tapped to help with the visual. You must be thinking, this is awesome. Like, that's gotta be a dream, right?
It's almost crazy. Like, I can't believe they're paying me to do this. Like I feel like I'm lucky, and I still feel that way, honestly, after 20 years, and we just wrapped a new album, and I honestly, it's a dream come true. It's amazing. Like I said, I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this stuff.
Is there any element, and maybe this is a loaded question, but is there any element while you're in that creative process where you're thinking beyond the CD cover, where you're like, hey, there's a good chance this is going to be slapped on some merch, some T-shirts, and I go back to like Around the Fur, like
some people
tattoos,
yeah.
But I go back to like Around the Fur, where it's like that picture of the girl is very difficult to translate to merch. I'm sure they did put it out, but is that part of the creative process?
It is now, and I think back then it was too, but I don't think I realized it as much as I do now. I think that the way my brain works subconsciously is I think I was going there in both those records that you cite, White Pony and Hybrid Theory. Like, there's a lot of elements that I created that translated really well to merch. I don't think with both those records, well, with Pony, I did a lot of merch. So I definitely saw like, okay, this can work for that. with Hybrid Theory, I created like those logo types and all those little symbols. And then, those were wisely used as like, all these pieces of merch, and like people really ran with those things. So I think, back in the day, subconsciously, I was doing that. Now I really think like, how is this going to work? Like on a hoodie, how's it going to work on a t-shirt? How about a billboard, and to your point, tattoos, like, it's crazy.
I mean, it's crazy. It almost seems like you created that, category to an extent. Obviously there's the Rolling Stone logo that's, been on every piece of merch that there is. But for our era, like, I can't think of any other bands that, that match Linkin Park and Deftones that have that kind of collection of artwork that's transferable to pretty much anything physical good wise. So, and beer included,
I think it's fantastic. And it's, I can't believe I'm even mentioned in the same sentence as the Rolling Stones, logo, because that's something as a designer we always get hit with, like, can you just make me something that's like the Rolling Stones lips? And you can't just do that.
Right.
It's like impossible. And if I were to present that now, people go, what does it have to do with the Rolling Stones anyway? People don't get it until it's like in context, and that's the point with all this. Is I think luckily the visuals accompanied amazing albums. These, first and foremost, these are amazing albums that hold a very special place in people's lives. And I think that, it just so happened to have, done the artwork that goes along with those things. And so that's pretty special.
You're almost like a de facto band member, because obviously Mike Shinoda is an artist like you had mentioned, but it seems like you guys were almost in the same headspace putting stuff like that together. And with Deftones, I know they have some visual artists in the band too, with, Chino or whatnot. But it seems like you were basically running with the band's ideas through their music maybe, but also just kind of understanding what they were trying to convey.
Yeah, I think, jumping in with both those bands, I understood, right away, hopefully what they were, wanting to go for. But even after, even more so after all these years, you kind of develop an understanding and a shorthand when, like, Chino tells me something, even if it's, a theme or a word or a vibe or, a feeling that he has, I can kind of, try to take that and put a visual to it. And same with Mike from Linkin Park. Like, if he's just, kind of giving me short little snippets of things he's interested in, I can then put it into the, into the ringer and try to see what I can come up with. And usually it's, in the same zone.
Well, and you've obviously been working with both of those bands now pretty much since, right? I mean, both Linkin Park and Deftones. You did the most recent Ohms for Deftones, and then the 20th anniversary of Hybrid Theory's packaging just came out too, right? You were a part of that?
Yeah, a big part of that. Like, so with Deftones, I've done every record since, including White Pony and since. With Lincoln, I took a little bit of a break halfway through and just kind of like, and I say I took a break. I was still involved, but I wasn't actually, there's a few covers mixed in there that I actually didn't, have my hand in. Always still involved with the band and helping with everything, and then diving back in with the last, few records. But yeah, I mean, honestly, it's like 20 years feels like a long time, and I think we've done a lot during that time, but it also feels like such a flash. It goes by so fast,
Well, you're halfway to the Rolling Stones lips with Hybrid Theory, and
that's right.
That's
right.
halfway, 20, 25 years, you're almost there.
Yeah, exactly.
It is fun. I mean, I'm not going to go as far as to say as those albums. I mean, they musically they stand on their own, but there are some albums where I look at it and I almost intentionally don't want to listen to it, and hopefully it didn't have anything to do with these, but like the Weezer Hurley album with the dude from Lost, I look at that and I'm like, I don't think I want to listen to that because the cover, the visuals. But I think with these albums, it was perfect harmony. It just.
Well, Hurley was a bad phase for me, man. I'm sorry you don't like that cover, but I was going through some weird stuff at the time.
That was the first album that came to mind.
No, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, no, I know. I get visceral reactions to things sometimes too, and that's what I was kind of hinting at earlier. So there's some albums that I love where I'm like, man, I'm not vibing with that cover. Like I don't get it. So yeah, hopefully I haven't fallen into that too many times.
So I kind of touched on the packaging a little bit with the 20th anniversary of Hybrid Theory, but that has to come into play with everything you're doing now. The vinyl packaging, that's obviously become huge over the last couple of years, and vinyl's always been around, but the resurgence that we're seeing today. And I mean, that's how I grew up going and getting CDs, and now I'm don't buy CDs, I buy vinyl and I stream, right? So if I really want to listen to something all the way through, I'm looking for that really pretty vinyl, the gatefold, what's gone into it, the booklet, all that fun stuff. So that's got to kind of inform what you're doing now.
It is great. I started off doing vinyl here and there. CDs were big when I started, but vinyl was also a component. Then it went away for a while, so we kind of all forgot what we were doing for a minute, and now it's back, which is awesome. The Linkin Park Hybrid 3020 package has, some fantastic pieces of vinyl in there. What an amazing package that is, and took up a lot of my time this year, so it's been a special project. And we just did a lot of really nice vinyl for Deftones' new release. There's a clear vinyl with a special kind of like holographic reflective jacket, and then a gold vinyl, and it's really fun getting to kind of do things on a larger space for sure.
Yeah, I think all three of us picked up Ohms on Gold.
Yep, I got the gold one.
Awesome.
Great record. It's great.
It's such a good record.
So curious, Frank, in that, when you start to work with these they're artists. You're an artist, but we kind of refer to musicians as audio artists. Is there any conflict in that where someone's coming from an audio lens, you're coming from a visual lens? Is there ever any tension there, or do you kind of override what the artist translates in their head?
I never override anything that the artist sees. I think I haven't encountered too much tension, fortunately. I think that, I've been lucky to work with people that are extremely creative, but also trusting in the process, and I think if you are transparent about what you're doing and give people options and really try to make their vision come to life, then, the working relationship is really good, and it only gets better after time. Like to have these relationships with both these bands after all this time is, amazing. And I think, even though they're like they're sonic artists, they're also, it's kind of like their vision, right? It's their feelings, it's their emotion. So it's just a whole collaborative process, really. And I think bringing to the table what you're interested in and what you are passionate about, people see that and they kind of like, they stand behind it, meaning the artist. Like if I bring to the table something that I'm really loving and I'm passionate about why this is, one of the correct answers, more times than not, people see the vision, and can kind of see that.
With more artists releasing singles, does that become more work for you? Or is it are you more of like a full album person, or is the single to single kind of the normal thing now?
Singles are definitely the normal thing. And I like it. I like both. Like the full album is amazing to kind of get this vision and kind of really get to expand on it for all the various pieces, but singles are fantastic, and it kind of changes the mentality a little bit. It's kind of like, okay, let's have some fun with this image for a minute. Like it's a little less kind of what's the right word? Not final, but it's not so heavy as like, okay, this is the album cover that's never ever going to change in the history of this band. A single is kind of like, hey, this is what we're thinking at the time, musically and visually, and I think sometimes there's a little bit more freedom there, so it's fun.
It gives you a chance to make more than one visual for us, maybe a set project, right? I mean, we had a guest on a couple episodes back who's a local artist here in Maine who put an album out last year, and instead of just putting out the one album with the album artwork, say, here it is, everybody, good luck, hopefully you like it. He's like, let's just do a single every week with a new cover every week. So that must be fun to kind of get some more hands-on in that.
Oh, it's great. Yeah. I mean, it's, and like the songs, as you're releasing songs, no two songs are the same. And so it really creates, like, you can create different visuals for every song. Like everything can have a different vibe that really kind of fits with that song. I've done some fun work for this artist that we have called Carly Hansen, and she's released a lot of singles and EPs, and every one that we do is different. We do, sometimes we'll do a photo shoot for one, and she'll have an idea for a theme. And I mean, if you look at the lineage of the last 6 to 8 things that we've done, they're all across the board, different vibes, and that's a lot of fun.
So the way artists are releasing music, like with the streaming, obviously, where they might choose the weekly single route, I'm sure the technology that you use to create the visuals has changed. Like, I mean, if I think back to 99, I'm sure I'm sure Photoshop, an early version of Photoshop was around, or, you know, tools like that. Has that, in your eyes, like even the playing field? Because we joke about it. We make visuals using apps on our phone for our podcast, and we're a bunch of hacks with the visual, but I think it looks decent.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm curious about that. If you look at things differently, or if the technology's caught up with what you have in your head.
I think that the technology aspect of things is great. And I actually embrace people doing things on their own. I love what artists are kind of just doing on their own or with friends that they have, and uploading. Like, I think that there's a lot of pushback from creatives in the industry that are like, I do album covers and this is kind of like the way it's supposed to be done. I really feel like there's no right or wrong. And I feel like that's really exciting right now. Like, I think the chances people are taking with art and, what's happening in the digital space with album covers and single covers is so exciting. There's always going to be a place for creative people. So I'm not worried about like, losing a job to somebody because, it's just, there's always a need for creative people. So I embrace, all these different aspects of things
losing
happening.
a job to us.
Losing a job to you guys.
That's
yeah,
not
I've
gonna
seen
happen.
what you do, man. Yeah.
It's not gonna happen.
No, but I mean, just the idea that you guys are doing stuff on your phone. We have artists all
Yeah.
the time that are sending us images like, okay, here's a single cover. And I'm like, I look at it, I'm like, what? Like, this is crazy. Like, what did you use for this? But then I go, wow, this is great. Like, it inspired this, this feeling in me. And that's just really exciting.
I'm amazed. I'm a zeros and ones guy. I think, Twan, you kind of are too. Nate's probably the most artistic of the three of us. But that being said, we're all pretty limited in that space. So I feel like, the phone does a lot for me, and that's kind of nice. I'm glad that it does. So.
I want to know what you guys are using because I'm not familiar with those programs.
Oh, okay. We've got a couple kicking around. Canva, I think we're using to make Instagram posts as well as YouTube title pages, which I just recently found. What were you using before?
Just a free app, just a free, deep into the Apple Store.
All on iPhone, and Mac.
That's amazing.
Yep, I'm putting the YouTube videos that I've put visuals to. I don't make any of the visuals, but I'll find stuff and whatever's out there in the public Google domain, and kind of link it to whatever. And then obviously we take pictures of stuff that we have, ticket stubs, stuff from concerts. I think we put 15 or 20 videos from concerts up too. So we're just.
I think it really speaks to how people are making music, and that the visuals that they're making kind of go along with how they're making that music. There's really no boundaries. You don't have to go clock into a studio anymore to like make some music that you're going to release the next day. So the visuals, fall in line with that. And I think it's cool. I will tell you, the only thing that's challenging for us from like a label perspective is clearing images and fonts sometimes, because, the mindset is like you were just saying, kind of like, oh, I found this image here and there. And, kids are making some really cool things, but like, the images we don't have the rights to. So that's challenging. Yeah.
I don't know. You guys are saying I'm the creative one here. I don't know about that, but they do get inspired. I mean, I'm not from California, so moving out here, I'll go out to Joshua Tree, or I'll go up to, to Mammoth, or just down to the beach every day. I take a walk, I take a run, and I'm inspired by just these visuals that I'm seeing. Not being from here, especially, but obviously you're up in LA, so how beautiful it is here. Is that a source of inspiration, just your surroundings? If not, or if it is there other places where you're kind of getting inspiration? Let's say reverse from what you said earlier. You heard the record, but maybe you didn't hear the record, and you're kind of just throwing stuff on the paper, just as almost like a backup for some project, future or present.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some merit to everything you just said. That all relates to me. I'm extremely influenced by my surroundings, like, not only my current surroundings, but I think like where I grew up, things I took in as a kid, as a young adult living in LA. I often, take a walk around town just to kind of like see what I can see. Back before, quarantine, our offices are in downtown LA, and like the artwork, within a, half a mile radius of our office is just unbelievable. So if you're ever feeling not inspired, a quick walk around the neighborhood and a few photos later, you've got some really cool stuff, or at least I do. I think my aesthetic goes in that route for sure. So yeah, the environment plays a huge role. And I'm also like a massive cataloger of like photography. I'm shooting photos every day. I save everything. I, use so many things in all the things that I make. I think over the last like 10 or plus years, my photography or something has found its way into some kind of project, if not the album cover of something I've made. So those are huge influences for me.
That's awesome. And you said you take photos every day. We had Lance Mercer on here. I don't know if you know Lance.
Yeah.
From the grunge era. And he was telling us about how he was going through like huge bins of old photos and stuff like that. So you must have all sorts of just catalog stuff, especially putting that 20-year Linkin Park package together, like photos that maybe you didn't see since you shot them 20 years ago or so.
Yeah, that's I love taking photos. I hate editing photos. I don't know if anyone else feels the same way, but I absolutely hate it. And I have to tell myself to stop taking so many photos, but now it's too easy, with the phone and everything. It's a daunting process going through everything, but I absolutely love it. And you never know where something's going to, find its way. I think some of the things I created in the Linkin Park box set that we just did were, photos of textures on walls that I took, or some graffiti somewhere or something like that like ended up utilizing. And then, speaking to that, the photos in there, those were all done by James Minchin, who's a friend of mine and a longtime friend of the band. He shot Linkin Park with us and Deftones countless times. So getting a chance to kind of pour through all those old photos for the Hybrid Theory 20 box was amazing. I mean, I don't think we had enough room in the box to put up all the really cool photos, but so, the editing process is difficult, but yeah, a lot of really great stuff.
We're just so intrigued by the creative process for different creatives. Like Tony is a friend who's a beat maker, and we approached him to say, hey, we'd love some intro music to the podcast. So we didn't know if he would curate something explicitly for us or if he had something already. And it was more the latter. He had something that he wanted to, apply somewhere, and it was a perfect match. So I'm just curious. It sounds like you have probably a mix of both, where you have kind of an arsenal of visuals and images, but then certainly you'll curate and create based on the project. Net new.
100%. Yeah, I'm an archiver by nature, and after doing it as long as I create a lot of things when I'm making something for somebody, and if one thing doesn't stick, I'll keep those things around as ideas for something later. I can't say that I've ever been able to find a home for something that I intended as a different use, but maybe it inspires something else or elements from it. Go on to be something else. But yeah, it's just those ideas definitely relate.
So you're not just in the music space. You've done I think we saw a bottle of wine, some artwork for a bottle of wine. Obviously beer. We talked about the Deftones stuff before we came on tonight. The beers down at Belching Beaver. So you're working in other spaces as well. What's you enjoyed doing beer and wine and a few other things too?
Absolutely. Yeah, that stuff's been fun. I mean, it's been helpful, obviously, that the beer stuff's been related to music, so there's an anchor there. But yeah, stepping out of the, square format for a minute is fun. The beer stuff was a lot of fun. And then, yeah, the newly released wine with Tank Garage was really great. Like, they do really beautiful labels. And they approached me to work with them, some of my art, that I make on the side. So I was happy to be a part of that because they have really, fantastic stuff that they do and just really artistic labels, most of them without any kind of like typography or description about the wine, and so it's just all about the craft.
So with the wine, I mean, you get to listen to White Pony before you making visuals. Are you drinking the wine before you make the visual?
Unfortunately not. I did not get to drink the wine or taste the beer before that. I think none of that happened. It was just about coming up with some cool artwork for those things.
Yeah, you make a good point where with a CD, your canvas is like a 4x4 square, and I never even thought of that. You know what I mean? For the person doing the visual, so you are limited, right? I mean, you're limited with your real estate.
You are limited. It's weird. My brain just automatically goes square, even before I was working, in this profession. But it's definitely nice to get outside of that and do some posters sometimes, or, even more so getting into the merch space and kind of figuring out how things fit on a garment, or outdoor advertising. So yeah, any chance to get outside of that is nice, but I always come back to that nice uniform square.
That's awesome. Speaking of outdoor advertisement, this Deftones Ohms album, were you part of the billboards and all the secrecy around the rollout in Los Angeles?
Yeah, big time. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Man. Yeah,
That's
that
awesome.
was really, really special. And, just so happy that we were able to have the resources to be able to do that. It's not often that you can put a billboard up in a very popular part of town with no call to action. There's nothing on there about on sale now, or no description even of like what it was. So to be able to do something that's kind of mysterious like that in this day and age is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. I didn't even think about the fact like that you said it didn't have like a little Target sign under it, or Best Buy or anything. It's
Yeah.
literally just the artwork, which is really
So
cool.
we just put the eyes up. If any, not everybody saw it, obviously, because not everybody lives in LA. But we put it up on Fairfax in a really popular part of town, and it just had a slice of the album cover on it before the album cover was even revealed. So these eyes went up, a week and a half before anybody even knew what it was in relation to, and it had a piece of a lyric from Ohms. And it was just, the whole rollout was really mysterious and I think really, really cool.
So that's got to be nerve-wracking the night before, that's going live.
It was, and I was just, I liked the process. Like, I liked people kind of slowly figuring it out. Like, there's so much cool art happening in LA that, like, I don't, I think people just like, oh, that's cool. Or they thought it was an ad for the store that it's above or something, a clothing line or something like that. But to watch the realization process, happen as it coincided with the website kind of going live was really cool, because throughout that week, the website slowly revealed the album cover every day. So, I kind of all the puzzle pieces came together.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really great. We don't get to do that kind of stuff that often. So, to be a part of that now is really great.
Well, even on the East Coast here, the anticipation was like, we were all, holy shit, this is amazing. Deftones are, they're leaking stuff here and there. We're getting an album, like, cannot wait.
So great. I love the anticipation. I mean, the fan base for that band is just incredible, and it's so special. And I'm a fan as well. So I know I would have been the same way. I mean, I went down to there to take pictures with the billboard because I made it and I'm proud of it, but I would have been down there anyway, even if I didn't make it. So, I get it.
Yeah. And with like the longitude, latitude coordinates, which led to the billboards, I believe, right?
Yes, exactly.
The rollout of that album has been a topic on this podcast several times. And
a couple times.
And then just the way the OHMS was hidden in the Spotify visuals too. Were you part of that?
So, I'm fortunate to work with an amazing team, and, too many people to cite, but it's the amazing team at Warner's that was responsible for a lot of that. And the marketing, like you say, the rollout, it was, it's a 100% team effort from everybody on kind of like getting behind this thing and figuring out how we can, get this record out during a very challenging time. This is a weird time to be releasing music. So it was very important that, we do some creative things.
Yeah, especially not being able to tour off it.
You said it was a weird time. It is definitely a very weird time, tense time. A lot of other things we talk about on here quite often. Is there any, speaking of like other mediums, is there any movies per se that you saw and you're like, man, I would love to do artwork for something like that? I was talking to these guys pre-show about the Fight Club. Actually, it's the 10-year anniversary DVD, and it has this really cool package and reminded me of the Deftones White Pony package. Is there any movie that kind of stood out to you where you're like, man, I would love to work on some kind of anniversary set for that?
Wow, that's a really interesting question. I'm sorry I don't have a great answer for that, but sadly I don't. I'm not a huge, I love movies. I don't get a chance to watch as many movies as I would like to anymore. I'm sure that there's an answer there somewhere, but I don't have like something that was like, oh wow, I would love to work on that.
Any other medium you haven't worked on that you're like, I could kill that, I'm into it?
I would like to get back into the kind of surf, skateboard, snowboard arena. I dabbled in that a little bit before I was at Warner's. I'm an avid participant in all of those sports, so it's and I really respect kind of grew up with all those graphics and respect that perspective. So doing that stuff would be fun. Really enjoying doing merch for a lot of the bands I get to do. So I think moving more into textiles and garments and everything would be fun.
That's awesome. I can see that with something like Deftones and Linkin Park. It reminds me of like a Volcom or Hurley back in the day, like before they got huge. They had different variations of the logo and stuff like that. So I can see that.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting point you bring up about the logo, because I'm like the guy who changes the logo on everything that I do. And I think maybe that is a response to some of that stuff, like, you know, this skateboard graphics changing with every release. And, you know, it just seems normal to me. Whereas somebody is like, we got to get the logo that is the logo forever, you know, and it's like, well, that logo maybe doesn't work well on every piece of something that you're doing. So why don't we have 10 logos, you know?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, it's got to grow with the band and with the times, right? Deftones is different today than they were in 1992 or 94 or whatever.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, we always get tasked with like, okay, we come up with a logo for this artist. And it's like, okay, well, I don't know anything about the music. I don't know anything about the artist, but I'm going to develop a logo. Okay, but is it going to, maybe it works on this album, but like, what if you know, like you're saying, you mature a little bit and your style changes and you want to use a elevated piece of photography for the next release. Maybe that logo doesn't marry up with that. So definitely a fan of like keeping things fluid and whatever relates to the project, you know.
Yeah, and especially like a band like Deftones, the visuals have matched the audio brilliantly. So it's amazing how it can all come together like that, and the translation to merchandise and whatnot.
Thank you.
So do we want to get into lightning round? We do a lightning round where we kind of quick hitter questions, where you know, a sentence or two type of thing.
But if we go off on a tangent, there's nothing wrong with that. That's the thing. Our lightning rounds are actually, our lightning rounds are like long 3-hour.
Nice.
We take our time.
They're thunderstorms.
So we were thinking about like the visuals for festivals and how, you know, it's certainly a brand for festivals, but there's so many bands, and we're curious if you had any interest in putting together visuals for festivals and how that could possibly, the creative process would be different than targeting for a specific artist.
That's a really great question. I've done a few things here and there. Dia de los Deftones, which is, you know, would be in its third year now. I've done the branding for that. It's challenging when you have to fit a lot of band names onto a poster. That's why a lot of those things don't end up looking so intriguing, because you have to, you know, the bigger it is, you know, look at Coachella, for instance, you just basically need a blank space to fit, you know, hundreds of bands. So it's challenging. It's not always with the exception of Deftones, you know, we had eight bands or so on that. So that was really cool. And it's nice to work in that space. You get Coachella status, or like, you know, some of these other giant things, it's almost predetermined as to what it's going to look like based on how many bands you have. So it's challenging. I think at that point you come up with a great logo. So back to, I'm going against everything I just said with logos, but you come up with a really solid logo, and then you just list everybody underneath that, and then that becomes your tool.
Yeah, and if it's going to be a festival like, you know, Lollapalooza or Warped Tour, Coachella, you're going to see the same logo every year, and those bands may change, but the logo is still there. You know what it's going to look like. You're like, oh, there's the Warped Tour logo. I've seen that before. Okay, who's on the the docket this year? So I get that. That makes sense.
You're totally right. Forget what I just said about changing the logos.
So we've asked this of every person we've had on so far, interview wise, favorite piece of what we call nerdery. So nerdery is just like miscellany, like you were talking about having that burned copy of the Deftones White Pony album prior to it coming out, something like that. What's your favorite piece that you own?
Wow, that's a good question. I'd say it's probably all Deftones related. It's probably some of those things, like burned copies of albums that I've gotten before they've come out. You know, I actually have stuff from Deftones from before I started working with them, flyers and ticket stubs that I saved. Nice. You know, I have an old cassette tape that has it has Root and 7 Words, or 2 songs from Adrenaline on it that I received before, you know, Adrenaline even came out. So some little, you know, mementos like that, you know, that's how much of a fan I am. Like I still, appreciate all that stuff and still have it all. So yeah, probably, you know, Strange Ephemera, Deftones related.
That's so cool. It's gone full circle, because we have tons of that stuff in storage. In fact, I have 2 huge, what are they, 55-gallon buckets?
Yeah, 35 at least. They might be 35. Yeah, they were huge.
Filled.
One's
with
here and one's at Twan's house.
Yeah, cassettes, promo posters, a lot of actually White Pony promotional posters that came out because I was buying them. You know, the release that came out in Europe, I'd buy on eBay just to have it, stuff like that.
I love that. And, I save all that stuff, and to be now the person that's making that stuff is amazing. Like, I have people sending me stuff on Instagram. They're like, oh, I got this promotional CD from Germany. And I'm like, that's insane. Like, I don't even, how did you even get that? Like, so, the fact that I have a hand in kind of making these little prized possessions is so, so interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy. And like we were talking about Linkin Park, that went diamond. So your artwork's literally like everywhere internationally. And
It's crazy.
Not only physical goods, but tattoos. I mean, how do you feel about that? People getting your artwork on
I
their
think that it's
tattoos?
probably the highest form of praise, or,
Totally.
kind of like, it's so amazing to me. I never cease to be amazed of all the tattoos that there are, encountering them, like not even knowing that you're going to see somebody that has your work on them is, it's just, it's so incredible to me. It's like the highest form of appreciation. Again, it's about the music and the band, but like if the art was really lame, people probably wouldn't be getting it tattooed.
You wouldn't
so.
get it tattooed, right?
Yeah. It's in some beautiful renditions. I mean, so many people have the Skull and Roses from Deftones self-titled album, and some really beautiful pieces that have been done. So yeah, it's just mind-blowing.
I mean, how many Weezer Hurley album covers are tattooed on people? I mean,
just a few.
There's got to be one out there, right? Somebody
back piece.
Somebody lost a bet.
Yeah, totally.
That's so funny. Yeah, what if Black Flag didn't have the bars and it was like I don't know.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
I mean, there's probably certain things that transcend, like the music's so good that you even get a lame graphic, but yeah, it's pretty special. We actually just did, just out of that, there's so many Hybrid Theory tattoos. We got a bunch of submissions from the fans, putting together the Hybrid Theory 20 box set. I did like 3 full pages of everybody's tattoos of the album cover. So, gave the fans some love with their dedication to the band and everything. So that was a lot of fun.
So, I mean, that's got to probably plays into, this is a tangent alert right here, and we love to do it. That plays into what you're doing sometimes too, right? You're trying to bring the fans into it here and there and make it a little more interactive nowadays. Yeah,
when we can, I've done a few things here and there, like for Deftones B-Sides and Rarities album, I invited fans to send in photos. And we built the whole CD package using fan submitted photos. And that was a lot of fun because, for a band, for fans of a band like that, they really feel ownership and kind of like, they're so passionate about it. So I can't think of anything cooler than to, send a photo in and have it be, part of a CD package. So,
oh my God.
Yeah. And then, fan interaction on socials and everything is huge now. So yeah, I think that it plays a definite, an integral role in, crafting these releases.
One thing I'm curious about is for my real job, this isn't our real job, but for my real job, I manage projects in the tech space. And one of the things I hate doing, which is obviously part of the job, is context switching. So I'm just curious about, in your creative process, do you have, like 10 album rollouts at a time, or is it, hey, you have a project and you're in that headspace and you're just curious about that? Do you juggle multiple at a time, or?
Throughout the years, I've been tasked to juggle, multiple things at a time, and also, different genres. So it's like kind of switching gears from like a pop artist to a rock band or something. Yeah. So that's challenging. Luckily, throughout these last couple of years, I've been able to really dive into a project and really focus on kind of like just one kind of one body of work or one goal. But yeah, you're tasked with switching gears all the time. It's challenging.
Wow. I got a question for you, Frank. Obviously you're in your career and obviously you had your come up. Is there like a top 3 or maybe even a top 5 album artworks that kind of maybe influenced you, but just you regard as your favorites?
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, obviously the things that I've done, that we've been mentioning, White Pony obviously got me started in this whole game. So, that was amazing. I think the last album cover that I did for Linkin Park, One More Light, was like really special to me in that it was a photo that I took of my kids at the beach. And it was an image that really resonated with the band. Many of the guys in the band have families and we've all kind of like come up during this time together. So it was this kind of special moment that that I got, that I captured as a photograph that then translated to a kind of a special album cover. A challenging time, obviously, because that was the last, album with Chester. He passed, so it kind of takes on a very kind of like the meaning kind of transcends. It's a little different, a little bit maybe more somber, but a special moment for sure.
It's like the Johnny Cash thing with the Hurt video that came out before he passed away. Same thing, right?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, it's like something that you start and it means one thing, and then it kind of goes on to be something different, based on what happens around it. And then, really extremely proud of, Ohms. Like, this was a very interesting record, and I think the visual is very challenging, and I'm so happy with the way people have embraced it. And it's gone on to kind of like, we talked about stepping out of the cover space and into so many different things, but it's really become like a nice branding tool and a good piece of merch and all that stuff. So really happy with the imaging on that.
Well, I think that kind of wraps up all the questions we had tonight. Really want to thank you for coming on. We were always excited to hear different people's processes and different parts of the music industry. We were 16 years old looking at liner notes and seeing your name. So to be able to talk to you about some of this stuff is really rad. Like we're pretty excited about tonight. So much appreciated.
Don't make me feel any older than I already feel.
Although, were you, did you go
No,
by
I
your
appreciate
name?
you guys.
Was it Phlegm? What was it?
Yeah, I did. That was a foolish choice of mine to do that. That's a whole other story. We can dedicate a whole other podcast to that. No, it's actually not. It was just a funny nickname that people had their little graffiti names, right? Or something, their monikers. And so I used to put that down. But then after a while, I was like, well, this is kind of silly because I want people to know that I did it in the future. No one's going to care about this stupid name. So yeah, it comes back to haunt me still.
Well, thanks again, Frank. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys. You have such an interesting perspective on music, and you appreciate the visuals. So I'm happy to be part of it, and I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks. That's awesome.
Thank you, Frank. We'll be in touch.
All right, that was our conversation with Frank Maddocks, the VP of Creative Design over at Warner Music. Really cool conversation tonight. Different world than we're used to. Hearing from the artists behind the visuals of some of the albums that we talk about all the time. White Pony and Hybrid Theory, we've talked about a little bit, just Deftones stuff in general, among other bands that we're familiar with, The Used and Alanis Morissette and stuff like that. Green Day, I think, did a Green Day album too. Yep. So yeah, really interesting to hear his process and how that kind of all comes about for him and how he started seeking out the Deftones, which we do too, right? We want them too.
Oh, totally. One thing that really stood out for me is, and we didn't get in if this was the case for every album, but at least with White Pony, he heard the album before creating the visual, which is just cool because you get in a headspace. With any music, you get in a headspace, and the fact that what ended up coming out came out of that is so cool. I love the behind the scenes look that the glimpse that we're able to get behind the scenes, especially for these albums that we grew up with and love and still love. And, we use this word a lot, iconic imagery for a lot of his work. So super cool.
Yeah, it is really neat. Because we were going through the album, booklets and whatever, and we see this guy's name, we're talking 20 years ago as a 16-year-old kid, just like, oh man, look at all these liner notes with all these different names and cool things. Come to think that 20 years later, we're actually interviewing these people and getting the full behind the music, behind the art, stories and just everything, inspiration. And for him is really cool because he literally started at Warner Music in 2000 and landed Linkin Park and Deftones for his projects. And Deftones had obviously been somewhat established at that point, but Linkin Park was like a nobody band. And to be art director for both those and have the art be so iconic, like you said, Twan, and transcend. 20 years later, they're doing like a anniversary set for Linkin Park, and Deftones is, they just dropped their new record. He's still working with them after all these years, and to hear that he was a fan beforehand, talk about dream gig, like he had mentioned it himself. It's just so cool to see that stuff come full circle.
when he sought out Deftones, right? He
Mm-hmm.
was working. He took the job at Warner in '99, and Deftones were getting ready, gearing up, working on music for what would become White Pony. And he was like, I want to work with that band. I just I'm excited about it. And then is talking about listening to burn CDs that maybe are a little bit off mixed compared to what the final product was, and probably didn't have Back to School as the first track.
Right.
That kind of stuff. And just to hear that, and like, I just imagine owning that CD right now. Like, throw that up on eBay. What does that cost right now? That's craziness. I would never want to. I want to keep it myself, and I'm sure he does too. But just crazy. It's cool to hear how that all came about. And then the same thing with you're right, Linkin Park being a up and coming band, and not being a known commodity, not knowing what they had with the music of Hybrid Theory, and then the visual that went along with it that we're still seeing today. It's as you said, it's iconic. It is what it is.
Yeah, such a cool story too. And one of the questions in hindsight, I kind of wish we asked was like, if there's any albums out there that he looks at that he thinks he could put his own personal touch on. Maybe albums that the visual missed the mark, or he thought he could. Anything that comes to mind. And it's actually kind of cool, Nate. You said that for the Fight Club anniversary DVD set, you said it kind of looks like Frank's work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm wondering whoever created that, if they were inspired by Frank. It's just, he's got a cool style. But it also extends beyond the graphics too. Like the Linkin Park One More Light was a photo, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which, kind of
kids.
a dual threat. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
Well, not even just music, right? He did the label for the wine, the bottle of wine. He's done art for Belching Beaver, Deftones collabs for beer. He's had his hands in a bunch of stuff, which is really cool. And for me, it's always, my brain doesn't work that way. How do you do that? Like, how do you even, you've got a blank page and you've got to fill it, and you've got to come up with something, semi coherent, and I just don't know how that works. And to hear him talk about it, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is really neat. I think that's actually the nerdery of the subject is like, how do you get there? How do you go from nothing to this? How do you, in hindsight, you're like, yeah, Deftones White Pony, that artwork obviously just like works perfectly with the music, but he came up with that out of completely thin air. So to hear the music first is one thing. To drive to that, obviously me and him were talking about where we're living here in Southern California, and just drawing inspiration from your surroundings. So, they call it the sunshine tax and everything, but it's true. You get a lot of inspiration from what you're surrounded by. And he'd mentioned his office being in downtown LA, which it's a wild place. I don't know if you guys have been, but it's, you got Skid Row, and then you got the corporate buildings, and you got just a mix mash of like so many different things that are going on. So I can kind of see just a 2-hour walk around the block, and then just dumping those ideas on paper. And if it works with someone like Deftones or Linkin Park or The Used or whatever, I can start to see it, especially actually even The Used, when you think about it, that's got that same kind of like street art look. So I think he had mentioned that he was into like the surf and skate culture too. So I can't help but notice the similarities to like the Hurley t-shirts and Volcom shirts of like the late 90s, where it's just a series of different logos under the same banner. So yeah, I can start to put it together now with his backstory.
And change your logo, right?
Yeah.
You talked about having a new thing and that maybe comes from that surf and skate world, changing your logo every couple of years. Maybe it's time for, we're only 8 months in. Do we change our logo, guys?
We were just talking about White Pony a lot. I heard rumors, and actually maybe they're confirmed at this point, that the Deftones are going to basically remake, or not remake, but remix White Pony to be Black Stallion.
Black Stallion, yeah.
And I'm wondering if I assume, will have a part in that.
I would imagine, right? I mean, he's been working with them since White Pony in 2000. So he's, even if he's not completely directly involved, I would imagine they're bouncing stuff off of him, because they know him. And it sounds like they have a good working relationship, and talking about how White Pony came together and then continuing on with the work with them for all these years. They must be comfortable with each other enough that they'll tap in for some stuff, I would imagine.
Yeah, I feel like that relationship just keeps on compounding. I mean, with the beer, obviously, and the merch, and Deftones, they do capsules of merch, right? Special edition like capsules that come out like every few months, where it's a series of shirts and stuff. Yeah, it's awesome.
And more of that's happening nowadays anyway, with less inventory, less or less revenue with touring, right? That's there's no touring, so they're doing live streams, they're doing merch bundles, they're doing all that stuff to try to. So his services may become a little bit more necessary, as maybe you do 3 massive or 4 or 5 massive live streams a year that you try to make big things, in 2021 to get us through the pandemic.
Yeah, that was a cool interview, and we're super gracious for Frank's time. He's clearly someone who is in demand. I mean, just look at his catalog, and any band. I'm sure there's a laundry list of bands that, he's on their wish list.
Totally. Much appreciated, Frank, and really excited to get this out to everybody. And, if you like it, hit us up. I mean, we got the socials going, Podioslave at Podioslave on Twitter and Instagram, and then PodioSlavePodcast@gmail.com, where, I mean, anybody that's hit us up before knows that we're active. We answer. We are interactive with everybody that puts stuff up. We want to talk to you guys. So if you like this, you want to hear more stuff like this, let us know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Really cool to have Frank on. And I think we'll all reconvene next year for the 2021 Deftones road trip, West Coast
Dia de
style,
los
right?
Deftones, maybe? That would be fucking rad.
Petco
Because that was
Fire,
supposed to happen. That's
2021.
right around, that's September-ish, right? Late September, I think.
It's every early November.
Early November, even better.
Yeah.
Get me out of this state where it's 8 degrees out at that point. Southern California to check out one of our favorite bands, see some visuals that I haven't seen yet. Let's go.
Oh yeah.
Some killer openers too. Like Hum was on the last one. Meg Thee
Right.
Stallion.
We talked
like,
about them.
super eclectic mix that we've always said this. Deftones is like the Kevin Bacon of music. They just touch on every corner of everything, whether it's who they've worked with and whatnot. But
Yeah.
and with Frank, I mean, look at his catalog.
Yeah, I mean, he's all over the map too. He might be the Kevin Bacon of art directors, visuals. There's some cool stuff there, and we aren't just Deftones here. I mean, we do talk about them a lot, but because they're probably the band that we all like the most collectively. But we like all this other stuff too. Like I was a gigantic Green Day fan as a kid, and he's done some work with them, and that first Used record we all loved. It's cool to see the different avenues that can take you.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, guys. Yeah.
Thanks for checking us out, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Peace, podheads.
Cheers all.